The Ukrainians kill a Russian general with a bomb in Moscow, while a third Russian tanker sank in the Kerch Strait. This is happening while the front lines are still moving in favor of the Russians, but we'll talk about this as well as about everything else that has happened along the front lines and behind them in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Verstka, a Russian opposition media, was writing that the Ukrainians used 7,339 drones in attacks against Russia this year so far. They have attacked 30 different regions up to Murmansk, and in total, this was over 60% of the drone attacks that have happened so far in the war in total, showing the increased attack numbers of the Ukrainians. In Kursk, the front lines are moving because of the North Koreans being employed. At first, we have a change here. Roughly this area here has fallen to the Russians. They are now directly at Kurglenkoe. This is geolocated here. Here they were hit by cluster munition and suffered heavy losses. Again, the North Koreans concentrate much bigger numbers of infantry than both the Russians and the Ukrainians do. This leads to horrific losses, but gains them positions along the ground because they are simply able to overwhelm the Ukrainian defenders. This has gained them the ground here, but it has also gained them the ground here down in Plechovo. Once again, we have a geolocation where they are here at the river close to Kurilovka. This is up here. So they have reached these positions here in fresh attacks. A Russian mill blogger is confirming the position here, the developments. He's saying that they are savages in the regard of how hard they attack. They do not take prisoners, and they have achieved successes in a day where the Russians have failed over months. Obviously, the reasons for that we've already talked about. This is simply a tolerance in losses, a horrific tolerance in losses in the employed soldiers, so they are able to overwhelm the Ukrainians if they just send enough. We switch to, that was it from Kursk. In Kharkiv, I do not have any change in territory that I can confirm. So we go directly to the Eastern Front. And here we have Mashovets, Konstantin Mashovets, a former colonel in the Ukrainian Armed Forces. He's confirming that the Russians managed to extend the bridgehead here at Dvorichna, and by now we have a geolocation of it as well. They have reached the southern parts of Dvorichna here in this area. Recently, the bridgehead was only roughly like this here. Now it has extended southwards, and it has extended northwards into Dvorichna itself. So while the Ukrainians were able to push out the Russians, or push the Russians back over the Oskil further north, in the south they failed to do so, and the Russians have advanced further. Further south, the Russians have advanced close to Zarizove. So geolocation here, they have to the east of Zarizove, they have advanced. This should be at this position here, more or less. So we see them advancing somewhat further to the south here. Probably this area here is more or less under Russian influence as of now, as of late. Further south, I do not have any change until the Seversky Donetsk. South of it, fighting is being reported, but no change that I can confirm. Also nothing around Chasiv Yar, but in Toretsk we do have changes in territory. We see the Russians in the northern part of Toretsk, northeast of the stadium. And we see them advancing west of Toretsk in the direction of Leonidivka. As you can see here, they have advanced on both sides of the river. We see Russian attacks in that direction, or I think it's, yeah, there's a river. So the Russians have recently been spotted roughly, that should be more or less in this direction here, and in the south they keep advancing inside of Toretsk. In the area of Pokrovsk we have Ukrainian counterattacks that have entered Shevchenko. So they were temporarily successful, but that's the point, they were temporarily successful while we have them visually confirmed inside of Shevchenko. Afterwards, 2 days later, we have the Russians already north of it, so by now Shevchenko should be completely under Russian control, and the Russians keep advancing in this direction here. The Russians have also taken the have also advanced in Novovasilivka. This is here. We have a geolocation of this as well. Excuse me, this was this here. We have them right at the outskirts of Novovasilivka, showing that the Russians have now advanced up to this point here. They keep spreading out westwards from their advances here, from their recent advances. They continue spreading out westwards. Further south in the direction of Kurakhove, we have the Russians inside of Uspinivka. And we have them here. Here in Uspinivka, we see them in the western part of the town. So confirming that this should all be under Russian control as of now. The Russians have also advanced further north of Konstantinopolsk. We see them on the other side of the river already. That's on the map here. That's at this point. So the Russians keep advancing in this direction, but that's not all. The Russians have also taken the town of Selenivka. We have Konstantin Mashowetz once again confirming it here, that they managed in the direction of Selenovka, capturing it. So they are in here. This means they are only 2.5 kilometers away from the line of communication towards the west into Kurakhove over Dachne. So the Russians keep pushing towards closing the pocket here, and then probably their main focus will be in the direction of Pokrovsk. Further west in the direction of the oblast border here, in the Velika Novosilka area, we have the Russians advancing northeast of Rivnopil. They roughly have taken this area here, and they have now crossed the river Mokry Yali here in the south and have crossed over to the other side, thus creating a pocket in and around Makarivka. According to confirmations from the Ukrainian side, Ukrainian soldiers are cut off there and have right now no lines of communications towards the north. How it will continue, obviously, cannot be said at this point, but we see another position where the Ukrainians managed to get themselves to not withdraw in time and get themselves surprised and cut off. From the Crimean Peninsula, we have a third tanker going down. According to the reports, it's a third tanker within just 2 days, I think, that went down, and the results are already visible. As you can see here, the oil pest has already started. The oil is already coming to the shore where the tankers have sunk. Obviously, the ecological disaster there is also spreading. The biggest news from the past few days was probably that the SBU, the Ukrainian intelligence agency, has killed Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov and his assistant Major Ilya Polkarov in Moscow. He was Kirillov, the lieutenant general, was the head of the NBC forces of the Russians. He was previously, 20 hours before, he was indicted by Ukraine for 4,800 usages of chemical weapons against Ukrainian soldiers. We talked about it a couple of times in the past, that there is proof that the Russians have used chemical weapons so far in this war. He was killed together with his assistant with a bomb that was placed in an electro scooter, and this bomb blew him up, and a shrapnel killed him and his assistants. While there were some discussions about it, from what I've read, this was perfectly legitimate, as he was a military personnel involved in operations and planning, and thus he was a legitimate target to the things I have read. According to a captured person where the Russians say he was the perpetrator, according to that, he's an Uzbek, according to the Russians, and he was offered $100,000 and a European passport. According to Dva Majors, the two majors, he also rented a car and placed a camera inside of it, which was streaming to allow for the Ukrainians to blow up the explosive when the lieutenant general left his building. That's probably the source of the video that was circling around. In troop generation terms, we have Belousov, the Minister of Defense of Russia, saying that so far they have recruited over 427,000 men. This should mean barely over. so around it 427. This would mean roughly 1,200 per day, while the losses recently have been higher than 1,200 per day. So obviously now it's up to us guessing whether or not those numbers are true or whether they are exaggerated. In the past, we've seen that the Russians were actually fairly close to international assessments when it came to reactivated, modernized and repaired tanks, and probably in regards to recruitments as well. There, for instance, last year, the GUR confirmed more or less the Russian numbers. So if this is somewhat true, then we have the ballpark of what the Russian armed forces have recently recruited. The Russians are also doing their best to do anti-drone training. This is a video showing it. So supposedly the soldiers are being trained to dodge drones, obviously, though it ignores that the drone can just turn around and do another attack. So whether this is a proper method or not, I'll leave up to you to decide. The Ukrainians have also signed an agreement with Japan. According to that, they will start producing Japanese pickups inside of Ukraine. The talk is supposedly that we are talking about the Hilux, and that it will be come in disassembled form and increasingly using more Ukrainian parts, but it will be assembled inside of Ukraine. And obviously, as the Hilux is an extremely robust vehicle, it is highly useful in war as well. This is not just the Ukrainians who have found that out. It's basically the technical that everyone uses around the world. And in international support, we have the Biden administration will likely not be able to send the complete rest of its budget that was aimed to help Ukraine before the Biden term ends. And the European Union aims at training another 12,000 Ukrainian soldiers until the end of the winter. This would mean in total 75,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been trained. In other terms, we have news about the new update about the Ukrainian naval drones. This one here shows from H.I. Sutton the developments the Ukrainians have done. We've talked about it in the past already, that the Ukrainians have started using FPV drones from naval drones. This basically allows them the capability to strike outside of directly hitting something. They can even drive the naval drone somewhere and then start an FPV drone to attack something on land. And apparently they've also developed mine-laying capability, according to this, showing the continued innovations and developments inside of this war. But that was already it for today, for today's situation report. If you like this, then please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment. What do you think about the current developments? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.